Joining us now, the newly nominated candidate for the Progressive Conservative Party in the riding of Eglinton Lawrence. There's former mayoralty candidate Rocco Rossi. Welcome back to TVO, Rocco.
Great pleasure to be here, Steve.
Pleasure to see you again. Well, anything new going on in your life?
Yeah, a little bit.
Let's start with, obviously, this very controversial decision that you have made. After being National Director of the Federal Liberals, you have decided to run for the PC party, Tim Hudak's party, in the next Ontario election. Get us into your head. How did you come to make that decision?
Well, last year was the most intensive political year of my life running for mayor. You don't have your party behind you. It's you and the populace. And I got to speak to literally thousands of people over the course of that year, and they told me their stories about how they're stretched to the limit, about how they want government to do the right thing, but they want to make sure they're getting value for money because they are stretched to the limit. They need a break. And as I looked at my own platform, which was one of fiscal responsibility, and I looked at what was on offer provincially, I just felt a far greater fit with Tim Hudak and the Progressive Conservatives than with Dalton McGuinty.
I get that, but of course this is a team game, and you've been Team Red since you were a teenager.
11 years old. 11
years old, okay, even before you were a teenager. And you know that these decisions are not without consequences. So how do you get your head around the notion of being a Liberal for more than 30 years and suddenly you're a Conservative?
Because at the end of the day, this is about public service, not party service. And so when I'm going to put my name on a sign and present to the people of Toronto a view of things, I want to make sure that that view is lining up with their interests, their aspirations, and what they need to move Ontario forward.
What's the feedback been like from Liberals that you've worked with in your previous incarnation?
It's mixed, as you can imagine. I mean, some
is it really
are
mixed?
Yeah, some are very upset. Others are saying, "Look, we're delighted that you're still interested in public service." And for me, this is a continuation of the mayoralty campaign. I'm passionate about Toronto. I'm passionate about issues, and I think being part of Tim Hudak's team, a Progressive Conservative team, is the way to bring much needed change to Ontario.
I have received, and I'm sure you have too, some of the most excoriating emails from people saying, this guy's a turncoat, he's betrayed us, I wasn't going to work for Mike Cole. You're running against MPP Mike Cole. I wasn't going to work for Mike Cole, but boy, I sure am right now. I mean, you're getting this kind of stuff too, I presume, aren't you?
Absolutely, but I'm also being overwhelmed by a warm welcome from the Progressive Conservative Party and from lots of Liberals who, and non-aligned, who want to work with me because they see my commitment to public service as being what is critical in this.
The one thing I hear from people who have made this kind of switch, and obviously you're not the first one to do it, but the thing I hear is your former friends in your former party are madder than hell at you, and your new friends in your new party don't really accept you yet either. Has that been your experience?
Thus far, it's been an absolutely overwhelming reception from the Progressive Conservatives. I could not be happier. And at the end of the day, this is really about Torontonians and Ontarians making their choice. And I leave it to their judgment based on the platform that we will be bringing forward.
Does it feel wrong? You know, you think of yourself as a Liberal for more than 30 years, and now suddenly you're going to have your signs up in blue. Does that feel weird?
Again, my purpose is public service, and so I have to feel true to that. And this was not an easy choice, Steve, as you know, and you know that those comments are going to come, and you know that reaction is going to come. Far easier for me to have simply run for the Liberals, but that wouldn't have been the right thing to do because it wouldn't bring the much-needed change that Ontario needs.
Dalton McGuinty's been a friend of yours for a long time, though.
I've known Dalton for a long time.
I won't say a personal friend, but you've known him for a long time. Yeah. The first time you had to give a press conference where you said, Tim Hudak's the best choice, Dalton McGuinty is out of touch.
Right.
Again, did that feel weird coming out of your mouth?
No, because mine is not the politics of demonization. And I think it's absolutely fair ball to say, look, I can like someone and I can believe that he intends the right thing. But when you see skyrocketing hydro rates, when you see the kind of waste of money that happened around e-health, when you see the actual tragedy and comedy of the energy policy that's out there today, I mean, how can you justify that? I certainly couldn't, and that's what brought me to Tim Hudak and the Progressive Conservatives.
I know when Belinda Stronach made her decision to go from the Conservatives to the Liberals, there was a person who was instrumental in making that happen. Apparently she had a conversation with former Premier David Peterson, and whatever it was he said, it was the right advice for her at that moment, and therefore she decided she could make that switch. Was there a similar person for you?
Wasn't one. There were several very important conversations, not the least of which with my wife and my son, but also with people that I've been involved with politically for many years.
But there wasn't one guy who said, here's what I think?
No. At the end of the day, several conversations, and then I had to come to terms with what is the most difficult political choice of my life.
Now, again, you're not the first guy to change parties. But I think it's fair to say that most of the time in the political history of this country, most people flip to the Liberals as opposed to away from the Liberals. And there's lots of them on Parliament Hill right now. I mean, Bob Rae's there, Ujjal Dosanjh, Scott Bryson, you know, a bunch of examples provincially. You've gone the other way. You've gone away from the Liberals. Did you have Liberals who were saying to you, what in the hell are you thinking?
Absolutely, I had some, but for those who truly know me and know my commitment to public service, they're saying, good on you. I might not vote for you, but I respect your decision and I know you're doing it for reasons of conscience, and I'm fine with that.
Have you talked to any of those guys, Bob Rae or Ujjal Dosanjh or Scott Bryson?
I've not talked to them since the decision,
Since the announcement was made. No. David Ramsey, there's another one at Queen's Park who went. Have you talked to him?
No.
He went NDP to Liberal. Okay. I don't want to beat a dead horse here, but you've chosen a harder road.
Right, but none of those, unlike the rest of those names that you've named, I never actually ran under another banner. This is I ran for mayor under my own banner, and I'll be running as a Progressive Conservative in the riding of Eglinton Lawrence, and people will get to decide. It's not crossing the floor if you've presented yourself to people on the basis of a platform and then you stay with that. It's very different to ask people to vote for you under a banner, go into Parliament, and then become a member of the... I mean, that's a different decision altogether, and that's not the decision I was faced with.
I get the distinction, but you didn't run under another banner, but you asked people to give millions of dollars to the federal Liberals.
I did.
So, you know, it's not like you're coming to this completely, you know, as a fresh-faced kid, if you like.
No, absolutely, but I'm asking people, and as, you know, if we always voted for the same party, we would have a one-party state. There would be no need for elections. The reality is that millions of Ontarians will be asked to make a different choice this time, to echo the words of one politician, to choose change again. And those people are not being traitorous to their beliefs. They are being true to delivering a choice that's going to make a difference for themselves and their families. And that's all that I'm doing.
Rocco, I know every election's different, but do you know how many seats the Progressive Conservatives won in the 416 in the City of Toronto in the last election?
0.
And how about in the election before that?
And that was 0 as well.
Right. So
again, this is not an easy choice. This is not an opportunistic choice. This is making the right choice. And that's what's important to me, because I have to get up every morning and look at this face in the mirror and be at peace with myself.
Given that you didn't have to probably fight any other Conservatives for the right to run where you ran, because the Tories don't hold any seats in this city, how did you decide where you wanted to run?
Well, Eglinton Lawrence was the area during the mayoralty campaign that I had the most support, the most volunteers, the most signed locations. It's also a place that I know very well. I go to church there at Our Lady of the Assumption. My favorite breakfast place is at United Bakers, where, you know, fantastic egg whites and lox, and love the Franciscans at St. Charles as well.
And of course, you had another option, which was just not to go. I mean, you'd been running for mayor for a year. You could have just gone into the private sector, done something different.
And I was offered CEO positions in the private sector and in the hospital foundation world, and was asked by the provincial Liberals to run. So lots of options. Again, a desire to do what I believe is the right thing, And as Gandhi once said, be the change that you want to see. I want to see a progressive conservative government led by Tim Hudak running Ontario after the next provincial election. And so I'm being the change I want to see.
Is it true that Greg Sorbera offered you his seat?
It's true.
It is true.
Yeah.
So he would have stepped down, and you would have been the Liberal candidate in Vaughan, and almost certainly won.
Yeah. Again, there were a lot of easier choices to take, but they wouldn't have been the right choice.
And when you point out to your critics who say you're being disloyal or you're betraying us, are they at all moved by the fact that A, you're not the first guy to do this, and B, you're certainly taking a harder road, not an easier road to getting elected?
For a dogmatist, when you come to their faith, you have seen the light. And when you go anywhere else, you're an apostate, and it doesn't matter the reason.
Okay, all right, fair enough. All right, let's leave that one alone. Of course, people know you because you have spent the past year running for mayor. And we had George Smitherman in that chair recently, and I got his views on what that past year of his life was like. And I want to spend a bit of time with that on you, too. How brutal was it?
It was fantastic.
Fantastic?
It was fantastic. Aside from the end, where obviously I was disappointed, I absolutely loved it. I got to go to every corner of the city. I got to speak to people. I got to hear their dreams. I got to hear their hopes. I got to hear their ideas.
You didn't even make it to the finish line, though.
Well, because it was clear with 2 weeks to go that the election had become polarized. And quite frankly, I thought that Torontonians wanted to hear the debate between the two front runners, and it was best to get out of the way.
Was that very depressing?
It was very difficult. I mean, when you think that you're the best person on offer and you can't, and you throw everything in the kitchen sink at it and can't make the numbers move, you have to accept that reality and move on. But that passion and that year is a large part of why I want to continue to try to serve through elected public office. And the province is the single most important partner that the city has. And so there's a way to continue that desire to speak up for Toronto by going this route.
I asked this question of George Smitherman and got some nasty emails when I asked it, but I'm not that quick a learner, so I'm going to ask it again anyway. You know, was there a point in this campaign where you said to yourself, I'm prepared to lose, but I can't believe I'm losing to this guy, meaning Rob Ford? Did you ever say that to yourself? The thing about democracy is it's the worst possible government except all the others. Yeah, but you know what I'm getting at here.
Yeah, but to give credit to Mr. Ford, he landed on a message that people wanted to hear, that resonated with the populace, and that is the legacy of the Miller years. And he won fair and square. There's no two ways around that. And I can say, you know, I have greater education and had a more thought through policy, not relevant to the populace. And at the end of the day, they're the ones who get to make the choice. And that's the choice they made.
Timing is everything.
Timing is everything. And now that he's mayor, I mean, we want him to succeed because Toronto can't afford 4 years of nothing.
You're actually in the same party sort of as him right now. I know technically he's not a member of a party, but his dad was a Conservative MPP, right, which is what you want to be. Have you had words with him since the campaign was over?
I've had words with him to congratulate him since the campaign was over.
But nothing beyond that?
We've talked about a couple of issues with respect to the city.
Because you know, if you win, you're probably going to be like Tim Hudak's Toronto lieutenant or something like that, in which case you'll be dealing with Mayor Ford a lot. And presumably your interpersonal relations will be important to progress both provincially and municipally. I mean, have you thought about that?
Well, I look forward to that reality.
Okay. After such I know you said it was a fantastic experience, but let's face it, it didn't end the way that you wanted it to. And you did something after your mayoralty campaign was over that you've done before, but which our viewers may not know that much about. Tell us what you did. Where'd you go?
I went for a walk. A 900-kilometer walk across the north of Spain following a medieval pilgrimage route called the Camino de Santiago. I started on the French border and walked 900 kilometers to the northwest. You stay in monasteries and church basements and hostels along the way, carrying everything on your backpack. It's not deluxe. I'm spending $5 to $10 a night for a cot in the hostel, eating bread and cheese and tinned fish, and it's a wonderful gift. It's a wonderful renewal, a way to recharge your batteries, and a way to meditate and think about what to do next.
Third time you've done it?
This is the third time, yes.
What does it do for you?
Well, there's a wonderful psalm that says, "Be still and know that I am God." And in the Hindu faith, their word for church or temple is mandir, which means where the mind is still. So this notion of stillness is a very important force that runs through human history. And the Camino gives you the gift of stillness. For my case, 30 days, 30 kilometers a day. You get into a rhythm, you see absolutely gorgeous sights, and brought some pictures along.
Indeed. Before I show those pictures, Greg, get a shot of this. Has the guy been around? I mean, look at this. Yeah, he's been around. Look at the stamps on this passport. It goes on and on.
That is a pilgrim's passport. Those are the places, the monasteries, the churches I stayed in. And
you went by yourself?
Went by myself.
No Blackberries?
No Blackberry, and got to, again, it's such an incredible meditation. I was never able to do sort of, lotus position meditating. I just fidget too much, but when I get into a walking rhythm, it frees the mind to pray and to meditate, and you're certainly surrounded by wonderful sights, and you do meet people along the way.
What are we looking at here?
That is going into the Meseta, which is a 210-kilometer stretch from Burgos to León that's very flat. In the summer, it's heat, wheat, and sore feet. In the winter, when I did it, it's just sore feet. Gorgeous, gorgeous walk.
You took all these pictures?
I took all of them except the one of myself.
Yeah, right, which we'll show in a little bit. And this is?
That is a path up to the mountain town of Cebreo, which is a beautiful little town at one of the high points of the Camino.
This is spectacular. How old is this church?
That is the cathedral of in Santiago de Compostela, and that's at sunset the day that I arrived, and it was absolutely breathtaking.
Isn't it, though?
Always is.
Huh. How old is that?
Well, parts of it go back to the 13th century. The original church was burned to the ground by the Moors and then was rebuilt. That is a Roman bridge, which is considerably older, a couple thousand years old.
Huh. It really is, it does something for you, doesn't it? Being away. I mean, you would just, I think given the kind of lives we lead these days, people assume, how could I be out of touch for 30 days? Right. No Blackberries, no phones, no friends, no family around. How are you lonely when you do this?
Well, it's an interesting distinction, because one of the things the Camino teaches you is the difference between being alone and being lonely. I mean, it's interesting, in the Western tradition, we see putting someone by themselves as a punishment, right? So the worst thing we do, aside from capital punishment, is solitary confinement. People are sent to their room for punishment. In the Middle Ages, they were sent to convents and monasteries to be separated from society. And being lonely is not the same thing as being alone. The only times I've ever been truly lonely in my life is when I've been in a crowd. And the moment I'm out of the crowd and you have that freedom to look inside, that's not loneliness. That's being alone, but that's a gift that we should give to one another.
Rocco Rossi, thanks so much for coming in, sharing your memories of the Camino, and of course answering some questions about the challenges that lie ahead this coming October. Thanks so much.
Great pleasure. Thank you, Steve.